Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Stephanie.
I'm Tom.
It is our health unit, and we're talking about some crazy competitive eating, where people try to eat as much as they can in a short amount of time and not kill themselves. I know that if you drink too much, even water, drink too much in a short amount of time, you can actually die. So, guys, whoever's listening out there, don't try to do stupid things, especially for, maybe college initiation or things like that. We've heard of young college students dying from either overeating, overdrinking. Even water can kill you if you have too much of it. It's crazy.
Indeed, and we are talking about the world of competitive eating, and we're focusing specifically on the hot dog eating contest put on by Nathan's Famous every July 4th in Brooklyn. I think they have it in Coney Island, if I'm not mistaken. And I should mention that there is a peculiarity to hot dogs here in Taiwan. If you go to a convenience store and you buy a hot dog, usually it just means the meat only, okay? If you say rugo, it's just the meat. At least it used to be. And so a lot of foreigners who go into 7-Elevens and buy a hot dog, they're kind of shocked. Where's the bun? You're supposed to get a bun with this. So in the U.S., of course, hot dogs will always come with the bread. And here, I think it usually just refers to the meat, though that may have changed. I don't know. But in any case, we're back to talking about Nathan's hot dog eating contest and Kobayashi Takeru and the new reigning champion, Joey Chestnut. But we're going to focus specifically on their training regime or their training regimen. So let's get to it right now. Let's read the entire contents of our lesson, and we'll be right back. Nathan's hot dog eating contest and similar competitions may only last a handful of minutes, but competitors like Kobayashi and Chestnut put themselves through months of demanding training beforehand. The strain that is put on their bodies can lead to a common occurrence within professional sports: injuries. Kobayashi, for example, suffered severe pain from arthritis in his jaw. Several other health hazards are associated with competitive eating. The satiety reflex is a response in our brains that tells us when we're full, but competitive eaters persistently train their minds to ignore this mental signal. Similarly, they suppress their gag reflex. This is the instinct to vomit when the throat is full. These reflexes and instincts are built into our bodies to keep us safe, and becoming immune to them makes these athletes vulnerable to various health problems, including gastroparesis, occurring when the stomach is overly stretched and can no longer return to a normal size. Gastroparesis can result in chronic indigestion, nausea, and vomiting, as well as stomach tears or ruptures. Also among these risks is water intoxication. Drinking massive quantities of water to increase the volume of the stomach is a common competitive eating technique. However, this amount of water can actually throw the salt levels in the body out of balance, which can ultimately be fatal. The average person might think that competitive eating looks easy. After all, anyone can eat hot dogs. But by no means should amateurs attempt these challenges. The risks are real, and competitions even warn viewers not to do these challenges at home. Athletes across many sports manipulate their bodies in dangerous ways to achieve success and monetary gain. Competitive eating is no different. Although competitive eating is not considered a mainstream sport, people like Kobayashi and Chestnut should be regarded as serious athletes, if only for their undeniable commitment and devotion to their sport.
Okay, let's dive into day 2. We're going to start out by talking again about Nathan's hot dog eating contest, which I never did personally go and see, although they were holding them when I was still living there. I just thought it looked gross to watch these people stuff those hot dogs down their throats. Some of them will take the hot dog, the meat portion out, and eat the bun first and then the hot dog separately. Some that are really good at it prefer that method. But like Tom said at the beginning, we consider a hot dog to be the meat and the bread together. So they have these competitions where people get together and try to eat as much food as possible in a very short amount of time. We told you about competitors Kobayashi, who's Japanese, and Joey Chestnut, who's American, that they actually train for this. They put themselves through months of demanding training beforehand. Beforehand just means in advance of whatever takes place. So if you have a very serious test coming up, you need to study beforehand. And these two guys took their competitive eating very seriously and trained very diligently.
Right, and the strain that is put on their bodies can lead to a common occurrence within professional sports. Injuries.
Yeah.
You always hear about that, about athletes who are on, what is it called? The injured list?
Injured list, yeah.
Something like that. And yes, indeed, that happens quite a bit because of training or because of actual playing. They might twist a muscle or something like that. Kobayashi, for example, suffered severe pain from arthritis in his jaw. Now,
wow.
arthritis is when the joints get inflamed, and you hear about this happening with older people, and they have arthritis, and it's difficult for them to move their arms and things like that, and they try to seek various ways to treat this. And again, this is all part of injuries, which are a common occurrence within professional sports. Occurrence is from the verb to occur. This is the noun form, and that just means when something happens. Yes, this is a common occurrence in sports, injuries.
Yeah, we'll often use it with some sort of word in front of it. Common occurrence. It's a rare occurrence. Instead of just using occurrence by itself. So it's an incident or an event, and like all competitions, you can be injured in the world of competitive eating. Arthritis in your jaw. That guy is only 44 this year, so I kind of feel bad for him. I enjoy eating, and if you had to chew food, and every time you opened your jaw and tried to chew, if it hurt, that would be very, very off-putting, which means it would kind of discourage me from eating. He's already too skinny, so this isn't a good injury for him at least. Moving on to the next paragraph, it says several other health hazards are associated with competitive eating. The satiety reflex is a response in our brains that tells us, hey, stop eating, you're full. But when food tastes good, Tom, I ignore that signal. Or if you eat too quickly, your body doesn't have enough time to tell you, hey, you're full, stop it. Fatty, stop eating. But that satiety reflex is something that happens naturally in our bodies and our brains. It's really great. And if you don't eat too fast and you enjoy your food and you don't try to mix watching a movie with food because then you don't pay attention, then if you listen to your body, it will tell you, okay, you're full, stop eating. That's the satiety reflex.
Right, and competitive eaters persistently train their minds to ignore this mental signal. So if you're persistent, that means you do it over and over and over. You don't give up. For example, maybe if Big John has a crush on Pretty Lisa or something, and Lisa's just ignoring him and turning him down, well, he can persistently pursue her and keep asking her out for a date, and maybe eventually she'll give in and say, okay, I'll go out with you. In this particular case that we're talking about, eaters persistently training their minds to ignore this mental signal. They just ignore it over and over again until basically that satiety reflex no longer works and they can keep on eating as long as they want to.
Yeah, that can happen if you ignore what you're supposed to pay attention to. If you suppress something, you keep it away from you, or you hold it back, you hold it down. Have you ever been in a place where you're supposed to be serious and suddenly you want to laugh and you try to suppress your laughter or hold it back, but you can't? That's what suppress means. Sometimes free speech is suppressed, which means they don't let you just say whatever you want to. They try to force you to not speak. So you can suppress a lot of things. I just remember being in a very serious setting and wanting to laugh and getting in trouble Oh, because I couldn't suppress my laughter. Well, if you suppress something called the gag reflex, this is another automatic function of a body that if you have too much stuff in your throat, sometimes it makes you want to throw up or vomit or gag. We had just kind of a slang term when we were growing up when we'd hear something we didn't like, or we'd find out this really cute girl is dating this really jerky guy, in high school. Oh, gag me, or gag me with a spoon. That was an old slang phrase. So to gag means to actually start to throw up. If you suppress that long enough, it also goes away. So that's the instinct, this gag reflex, to vomit when your throat is full. Some girls, unfortunately, they want to eat, but they don't want to gain weight. And so they'll force themselves to throw up after they eat a meal.
Oh, no.
That ruins your body, ladies. Don't do it.
Right, and of course the gag reflex is an instinct to vomit when the throat is full. An instinct is like a special reaction the body has, and you can't really control it. You just have this instinct to do something. We talk about animals having an instinct, like spiders have the instinct to make webs, or cats have the instinct to constantly clean themselves. And so people have this instinct when your throat is full, but they try to suppress that gag reflex. And these reflexes and instincts are built into our bodies to keep us safe, and becoming immune to them makes these athletes vulnerable to various health problems, including gastroparesis, which we'll talk about in just a couple of seconds. But again, let's first talk about the word immune here. If you're immune to something, that means you will not be affected by this thing. Maybe you have some kind of a defense mechanism in your body that makes you immune to certain diseases. Other people will get sick, but you won't.
Or maybe there's someone who's really charming and handsome, but he's a big jerk, like, he just goes through girl after girl. Maybe you're immune to his charms. You don't find him charming at all. You can be immune to lots of different things. One thing we can never become immune to is the clock. And we've got to take a break right now, listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we can come back.
听众朋友大家好，我是 Anna。我们昨天提到大胃王的训练方式啊，还有大胃王到底这个全世界最知名的小林尊是怎么样让自己的胃变那么大呢？其实我们刚刚昨天讲到的有一个方法，就是喝很多的水，然后把胃撑大，然后还有包括他们其实是把大胃王这个竞赛当成是一个运动诶。好，所以啊，像在文章一开始啊，今天就有特别提到了。当然，在 Nathan 吃热狗大赛，当时我们看到的就是短短几分钟，12分钟，然后吃了50个热狗。但是我们中文就说嘛，台上1分钟，台下是10年功。像小林尊这样子的参赛者，其实在比赛之前都接受好几个月很严格的训练呢。这是我们第一句告诉我们的。而且这种身上的负担，其实就是会常常发生所谓的运动伤害。所以第二段一开始的时候呢，在第一段第2句一开始的时候，这个主词的 the strain 就带着一个限定用法的关系子句。那这个所谓的负担 the strain 是怎样的负担呢？后面 that 一直到 bodies 是限定加诸在他们身体上的这个 strain， 当然会导致所谓的 injury， 就是所谓的运动伤害嘛。比如说小林先生，他的下巴就曾经受到关节炎的剧烈的疼痛所苦。在接下来第3句，我们看到动词的 suffer 其实就是受苦的意思，可通常会搭配一个 from加上原因，所以我们会说 suffer from 加上疾病 suffer from something。好，那么其他呢，还有一些除了关节炎之外的 health hazard 健康风险是跟这个竞赛大胃王的比赛有关哦。例如在第2段一开始告诉我们，首先这一种叫做饱食感的反射 satiety reflex， 它出现在第2段第2句的地方。这个 satiety reflex 是什么东西呢？第2句就用一个限定用法告诉我们，它其实是一个A response in our brains， 这几个字是先行词，后面的 that 到句尾就是限定用法的关系子句，说明这个脑中的所谓的反应到底是什么，就是告诉我们已经吃饱了，不要再吃咯。可是大胃王选手会一直不断的努力来训练他们的大脑来忽略这种心理的讯号。 所以这是一个很危险的事。你如果一直说我没有吃饱，我没有吃饱，就会一直吃啊。还有另外一个作用是一个作呕反射，叫做 gag reflex， 出现在第3句的地方。那这个第3句的 gag reflex 是什么东西呢？ This is the instinct， 它其实就是一种本能，因为我们吃太饱的时候会吃到吐，有没有？喉咙撑饱的时候要呕吐的这种本能，大胃王就要把它压抑住，这样子胃就可以撑大，吃得越多。但是这些反射作用跟本能本来就是要确保我们身体的安全的，所以如果真的要忽略这一些感觉的话，就会发生类似像胃清瘫这种问题。接下来第5句最后一个字的 gastroparesis 就是胃清瘫。胃清瘫就是我们俗称的所谓胃下垂啦。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Let's continue with our lesson. Of course, we're talking about competitive eating, but we're also mentioning that there are some health hazards associated with competitive eating. You might guess that that's probably bad for the body to be eating so much food at one time. So we've been talking specifically about some of those things, the satiety reflex. We're full, but we keep on eating anyway. Competitive eaters will train their minds to ignore this mental signal. We've also got the gag reflex, which makes us want to throw up when our throat is full. They suppress that as well. And, of course, if you want to become immune to these responses, there'll be some problems with those, including gastroparesis, which we'll talk about now. That's not very common, and that's a word that personally I had never heard of before today's lesson, so it's probably not very common unless you're going to pursue a job in the health field. You probably don't really need to spend too much time memorizing this word, but what is it? Well, it occurs when the stomach is overly stretched and can no longer return to a normal size. So gastroparesis can result in chronic indigestion, nausea, and vomiting, as well as stomach tears or ruptures. So basically, if you keep eating, you keep stretching your stomach, and then eventually it just cannot return to its normal size. That's what the stomach does. When you eat, it's like a balloon. It gets bigger, but when you digest the food, it gets smaller again. Like a balloon stretches big and small, but eventually with the overeating, your stomach will no longer return to its normal size, and that can cause other problems.
It sure can. What can it cause? Well, it can result in chronic indigestion, nausea and vomiting, as well as stomach tears or ruptures. So chronic means something that persists or goes on for a very long time or is constantly reoccurring. A lot of people have chronic asthma, chronic arthritis, chronic bronchitis. There's some things where people just can never fully heal and they just keep getting that same thing. Maybe you have chronic headaches. I have headaches almost every day. So that's a chronic headache. So you have problems that just persist for a long time. That would be chronic. Or I have a friend who says, I'm chronically poor. So she spends all the money as soon as she gets her paycheck. So she's chronically poor, which is a joke. So if you have chronic indigestion, every time you eat, it's kind of painful as your body digests the food that you have in there. Chronic nausea is awful. I have a sister who has chronic nausea. You don't want to eat anything, you just want to throw up all the time. Or maybe you're going through chemotherapy for cancer. That will make you nauseous. So that's a horrible thing to happen too. Vomiting, no one likes to throw up. And stomach tears, sometimes they have to go in and surgically repair those, especially if you have a rupture, which means a sudden tear or break in something. You could say the balloon ruptured. Or sometimes if people don't get to the hospital in time and they have appendix pain, sometimes that appendix, an organ in your body, will rupture or break open.
Well, that's what a stroke is, when a blood vessel ruptures, and you could have some problems from that. But we're talking about competitive eating. And then there's another risk, that is water intoxication. Toxic means it's poisonous, so intoxication means you're being poisoned by something, and drinking massive quantities of water to increase the volume of the stomach is a common competitive eating technique. I think a lot of people drink excessive amounts of water because they've been told that water will help you feel full so you don't eat so much. That never really works with me. But yeah, you should probably get enough water every day, but I always just drink when I'm thirsty.
Yeah.
I don't try to shove so much water in there, because if you do that, you'll increase the volume of the stomach and it will get big. And then it says here, this amount of water can actually throw the salt levels in the body out of balance.
Ooh.
So that's the phrase here, to throw something out of balance, to cause it not to be balanced. I assume that your body needs to have a certain amount of sugar. I'm sorry, a certain amount of salt.
Yeah.
If you have too much, it's bad. And if you have too little, it's bad. So with all that water in there, I think it will dilute the amount of salt in your body, so you won't have enough salt in your body. And that can ultimately be fatal. You can actually die from that.
You can. Now, the average person might think that competitive eating looks easy. Yeah, it looks like they're just shoving food in their face. How hard is that? That anyone could eat hot dogs. But by no means should amateurs attempt these challenges. By no means, no matter what. An amateur should never attempt to eat 50 hot dogs in 12 minutes. That's stupid. You don't know what you're doing. An amateur is somebody who participates in something, but is not at a professional level. They're doing it as a hobby, or they're not being paid for it. Once you're a professional, it's the way you earn your living. So they're just, enjoying themselves. Maybe they're pursuing a sport just for fun, as a hobby. Those are amateurs. But if you don't know what you're doing and you try to eat like Joey Chestnut and Kobayashi have done in past competitions, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, by no means, not at all. And related to that would be by any means. Can I come in and talk to you? Oh, by any means, by all means, please come in and let's have a conversation. But by no means means not at all. So yes, you should not attempt these challenges if you're an amateur, and the risks are real, and competitions even warn viewers not to do these challenges at home. Don't try this at home.
They do.
And athletes across many sports manipulate their bodies in dangerous ways to achieve success and monetary gain. That's what it's all about. Of course, you want to be successful, and in the end, of course, you want to win that prize money. Otherwise, it isn't really worth it. It's good to exercise to be in shape, but yeah, a lot of people want to actually make money. Monetary just means having to do with money.
Yeah. Maybe if you love to lift weights, maybe you're an amateur, and then you decide, hey, I'm pretty good at this, I'm getting kind of cut. My muscles look awesome. You might want to enter a competition, a weightlifting competition, and actually win some prize money and have a monetary gain that way. Competitive eating is no different from those athletes who train in other sports, although competitive eating is not considered to be a mainstream sport. Definitely not. People like Kobayashi and Chestnut should be regarded as serious athletes, so says our author, if only for their undeniable commitment and devotion to their sport. So if something's undeniable, the facts are right there in front of you. There's no way you can say something isn't true or doesn't exist, because it's just clear that it is right there in front of you. So you can't deny it, and you can't dispute it if something's undeniable. So yeah, I think I do appreciate that the fact that they train for it and they don't take risks, and try to protect their bodies as well as they can. But still, I wouldn't put them in the same category as a mainstream athlete.
But these guys are making money from this, and there is a women's category as well.
Of course.
And there are probably other eating contests besides the hot dog one. We didn't really talk about other ones, but there are ones out there.
Yeah.
And people try to win those as well and win that prize money.
Especially for spicy food. There are a lot of hot wings competitions these days, or jalapenos.
Right, the one on TV where they keep adding the spicy food or something to see who can take it before they pass out or whatever. But in any case, those are some examples of competitive eating. And that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Here comes our Chinese teacher.
像有些人胃下垂啊，就消化不良啊，恶心呕吐啊之类的。接下来第二段的第6句就特别提到，到底怎么样会发生所谓的胃轻瘫呢？就是胃过度伸张，没有办法恢复成正常大小，就会有一些慢性消化不良啊，我们刚刚说的这些，甚至胃还会破裂。还有另外一个风险 health hazard 就是水中毒 water intoxication， 它出现在第二段的第7句。那水中毒为什么会这样呢？因为我们昨天有提到，这些大胃王选手他们会喝大量的水来增加胃的容量，可是如果喝大量的水的话，我们身体盐的浓度 salt level 出现在第二段第9句的地方。这个盐浓度啊，电解质失去平衡的时候就会致命诶。所以第9句后面我们看到一个逗点的which到句尾，就是非限定用法补充说明的关系子句。补充什么呢？在这里的which是逗点前面一整句话，也就是从 this amount of water 一直到 balance。假设喝太多的水让身体盐分浓度失去平衡， this is fatal， 到最后会致命的。所以啦，回归到最后，我们每次在看这个大胃王比赛的时候想说，谁不会吃热狗啊？不就一直吃下去就好了吗？可是大家注意啊，非专业的选手绝对不要轻易来尝试这种挑战啊，在家拼命的吃热狗，拼命的吃什么东西。在第3段第2句的地方出现了一个语气很强烈的片语，叫做 by no means。 好，这个 by no means 可以先把它框起来，那你把它视为是一个单位的字，那这个单位的字里面有 no，就是所谓的否定。在英文当中，如果是否定字，像 no 啊 not、rarely、seldom 这些字 few、little， 只要是否定字放在句首的时候，句子都会形成倒装。那这个倒装是什么样的倒装呢？就是看起来好像疑问句一样。所以你看这句话，它的动词叫做 attempt， 企图做某一些事，而且语气有带着不应该企图去做这一些事哦。所以假设我今天要说的是肯定句，业余者应该要企图这些尝试，肯定句叫做 Amateurs should attempt these challenges。 可是我们加了一个 by no means 这个表示否定的副词，句子就感觉上像疑问句一样，把 should 放在主词前面就可以了。所以句子看到的倒装叫做 By no means should amateurs attempt these challenges。 当然有很多的运动项目啊，那运动员是用不安全的方式来操弄他们的身体，来获得功名、金钱的收入。大胃王这种比赛也是不例外的。我们看到第3段同样在第5句的地方，我们看到例外这个字啊，本来用 exception exception， 但是你也可以说 something is no different， 某件事情也没有不一样啊，也就是说大家都一样， no exception 不例外。好，所以当然大胃王比赛会不会进入奥运我们不知道，可是我们光凭小林尊啊，还有 Chester 啊，他们对于这项运动的投入其实就很令我们感到尊敬了。以上是我们今天的内容，我是安娜，我们下次见。
That's it, guys. Thanks for joining us. And maybe the next time you see a competitive eating contest on TV, you can tune in and see how these guys just snarf or, just stuff stuff into their face. So, yeah. But if you want to do it, make sure that you prepare yourselves because there are risks to it. For English Digest, I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Tom. Goodbye.
See ya.